Good morning, everybody. I feel like this has been such a rich time we've been able to share together, just continuous good stuff that has been poured into us. So I am hoping and praying that this can continue to be a part of that time. Um, my name is Shannon Dycus, and I will share a little bit about myself a little later. But I am really happy to be here and have this conversation together. Looking forward to the ways in which we can have this conversation and intersect together these concepts of hospitality and faith formation. So looking forward to both what I have planned to bring and both what you all bring in your own experiences as well. I want to start by just thinking about hospitality itself. When we use that word, what are the other words that come to mind for you? Or words or sounds or smells? What does hospitality mean? What does it create for you? Okay. Welcoming. Food. Baking, yes. I was waiting for that. What'd you say? I missed it. Oh, that's great. Mm. What'd you say? Or kilometer? That's good. Providing space. These are all excellent. Anything else? What other images come to your mind? Um, I missed one. Safety. That's good. Okay. Uh-oh. Non-judgmental. Hospital. Offering healing. Huh. That's good. As we think about hospitality and all that it means for us, I want us to hold these things in our mind as we um, use this then as a place where we intersect the idea of faith formation with how we understand our work and our leadership and our communities of faith. Um, I want to give us a chance first. Can we just go around and share our names? I like to be able to, I was trained as a teacher, and I like to be able to name people by name. Could we start with Neil?
Neil Onstead's one of the pastors at Waterford Mennonite in Goshen, Indiana.
Okay,
Merle Hosteller, the pastors at East Goshen Mennonite in Goshen.
great, Merle. Welcome, Renee. You want to go, Kathy? Okay. Okay. Can we start here?
Yes, employee, she reading Benin. Benin? Yeah.
Jeff come from Benin.
Welcome. Welcome.
He's on the board of the Biblical Institute from Benin.
Excellent. Excellent. Welcome. Mm-hmm.
And then Sylvie Guiden-Cohn from ELGA, Fellowship of Hope.
Okay. Thank you. And thank you for your work in translating. Mm-hmm.
Elsie Rempel from Winnipeg, Manitoba.
Marlene Bowen, St. Morgan.
Shirley Redcup from Ontario.
Okay. Okay, great. Welcome to each of you. As I shared, my name is Shannon, and there are two parts of who I am that I think might be helpful to how you hear me in my conversation about hospitality. I'm pastor at First Mennonite Church in Indianapolis. It is an amazing congregation, the best congregation I've ever known in my life, and I have the wonderful honor of pastoring it. It is a congregation that I met while I was in seminary, a part of field education, and I just came across this Mennonite church that I had never heard of before. I didn't know what Mennonites were, and my background is as a disciple of Christ. My family has been involved heavily with the disciples for about 5 generations, but I got to seminary. I said, I want to do something different. I want to hear something different, think about something different, and ran across Mennonites. Spent 2 years as an intern there during seminary, and then I have then returned later to serve in a pastoral role. So I come to being Mennonite as an outsider. As someone who has entered into a space that was not a part of who I am culturally, one where I have had to learn the traditions and the histories and the food and all of that good stuff. So paying attention to hospitality has been especially, I have learned some good lessons, and I have been able to translate them into ways that we can continue to learn together. One of the other dynamics that is important, First Mennonite is a predominantly white congregation, and to be an African American woman pastoring that group of people has been another interesting challenge, especially in the day and time that we live in right now. And so thinking about how we welcome, how we offer hospitality to each other and to people who are different from us is another way that I am especially attuned to. So those are kind of some of the primary lenses with which I offer this. I'll add one little more tidbit. I have also spent a year of my life living in the Dominican Republic as a guest, and it was an amazing year-long lesson in hospitality. So lots of ways that I hear this and understand this, and ways I would invite you to think about your own experiences and ways that you connect with this as well. I am probably gonna go a little fast. Okay, I won't go too fast. I won't go too. I won't try to go too fast, but we do have I'm sorry. Oh, that would be great. Thank you. I have a fairly short amount of time, and there's a lot of good stuff I want to get to. So let's just talk a little bit about foundation here. Yesterday's workshop time, if you all were not present for Safwat's workshop here in the chapel, it was incredible. It was videotaped. Please make sure you go back and watch that. Intercultural competency and faith formation was his topic. And in a perfect world, it would have been a wonderful prerequisite for having this conversation. When we think about culture, he invited us to some wonderful ways of living with a text, but also living with ourselves and how we think about culture. And I'll offer just a couple of primers that I think will be helpful as we think about hospitality. Culture is something that we all have. It's very easy when we are in the dominant culture to think that everything that is a part of our experience is a part of everyone's experience. But your culture is your culture, and everyone brings something different. And so it's really helpful to be able to articulate for ourselves that there are differences that everyone brings, and that what we bring may feel normalized to us because it is a part of the dominant culture, but it is not necessarily what everyone will bring to our experiences. So having that continuous awareness of culture and the differences that each of us bring is foundational in how we understand and perceive hospitality. So I want to start with that. So definitely, if you can go back and check out that workshop from him yesterday. And I also want us to stretch ourselves on how we think about hospitality just from the beginning. And it is all of these things. These were great descriptors, great images that we think of. And I think hospitality is what it is. Hospitality is not just love, you know? When we love each other, when we love someone, we care for them, we offer them that smile, we offer them that hug, we offer them healing in the way. But we have this concept of hospitality that is outside of love because hospitality stretches us. Love is what we give to the folks that it's easy to give it to. Hospitality is that thing that pushes us to an uncomfortable place. It pushes us, we have to make an active choice to be hospitable, as opposed to you seeing your child crying and there is an instant reaction to do so. Hospitality is not always that instantaneous reaction. It is that thing we have to choose to do. And so I want us to remember that this is a choice that we have to think about actively making all the time. In the handout that I offer, there's two sides to it. I want to start with the side that's at the top that says Making Room, Hospitality Along Formation Journey. Two key points there. And I'm one of those people, if you have a question, please share it. Please raise your hand, offer it. What you wonder about is way more important than what I can keep talking about. So I want you to feel free to jump in at any point you feel inclined to. Two key points here as we think about hospitality and faith formation, this intersection. That first line that says, Christian faith formation is a lifelong journey with Christ, in Christ, and to Christ. That's straight from some of John Roberto's work, as we think about Christian formation and how we understand what it is that we're doing with this. And then so I want us to think about this second line here as we think about hospitality. How do we inform, form, and transform along these journeys outside of the majority journey? So much of what we do, the way that we talk, the way that we interact with one another is within our primary narrative, within the primary culture of what we know. And so what does it mean to understand that that hospitality is a choice to engage someone outside of our primary journeys and recognizing that they have a journey? How do we invite that? And how do we then think about faith formation that continues to form and transform all of us as we extend hospitality and receive hospitality? So that's the premise of what I want us to think about today. Questions? Thoughts? Smells? Okay. Go ahead now. Yeah. Yeah.
I have to admit, some of our associations with hospitality are only warm fuzzies,
Yeah.
or they're only about, I invite my friends over for Sunday after
Correct.
dinner, and
Correct.
we all have so much in common.
Correct.
It's great.
Correct.
And that's the framework we sometimes have with what
Yep.
hospitality means.
Exactly.
Strangers, not so much.
Yes. Or even, there's a whole lot in between there. You know, our friends and our strangers, it might be that person who comes to church and who only has 2 good shirts and they don't always smell good. And inviting them over for dinner and knowing that it will be uncomfortable for you and still choosing to do it. Great. Thank you, Neil. So I want to start with this first section. A lot of what I am offering you today is from the text. I hope you all are familiar. If you're not, this is a great resource. Making Room and Christine Pohl, her work on hospitality, these are great. it's both good. She starts at a very historical, theological place of understanding hospitality in the Christian tradition, but then weaves in excellent examples of how modern hospitality is happening, how it has happened over time. Along with that book are study guides that you can use as a wonderful Sunday school class. Great place to have some conversation about what it means to offer hospitality. I can pass these around if you all would be interested. Pohl. Yeah. So a lot of what I offer is me using my thoughts or from what I have read of her. Okay. So I want us to look at these two top bullet points here. The distinctively Christian contribution to the hospitality tradition is its emphasis on welcoming the vulnerable, the poor, and the needy. And then the most vulnerable strangers are those who are disconnected from relationships with family, church, economy, and civic community. So this is, yes, pushing us past inviting our friends over for dinner. This is Jesus, you know, with the stranger, with the needy, with the poor, with the woman, with which is outside of the primary, the majority journey, and still choosing to love that person, still choosing to offer that person all of these things we would give to those we automatically love, and choosing to push ourselves to a place of loving them. And so despite the disconnections that one might engage as a stranger or a person who is vulnerable, each person still comes with an experience, with an history, with their own journey, with an experience, with a culture. One of the questions that we have to ask ourselves as church is, how do we listen to their journey? How do we make space for that? You know, we get so used to having our regular routine, our regular rhythm of people who lead worship and lead our songs and who preach. How do we make space for this person and their voice and their leadership and their participation in our communities? And how do we do so in a way that offers value to what they are offering, to what they are sharing, in a way that does not automatically label them as someone who is outside of who we are, but as a way of welcome. I think we all have people in our communities like this, someone who is vulnerable. Or someone who is culturally different than the majority. Think about that person for a second. Write their name down on your paper. How can you go back home and help make space for them? Our second set of bullet points here. They invite us to think about the mutuality in hospitality. This first one says, Jesus' role as our host, and I'm sorry for the spelling error, our host and our guest, it both enriches and complicates our understanding of hospitality. So if we think about Jesus, who is one of my favorite examples of hospitality in Scripture, is thinking about Jesus along the road to Emmaus. We see Jesus who arrives as this guest, who is this person who is unknown, yet they meet him along the journey, and there is not a whole lot of question of who are you, but let's walk along this way together. Even in their grief and distress, they said, let's walk along this way together. And hey, how far are you going? Let's stop and let's have a meal. Let's rest for the night. And so we hear Jesus first as this guest. And then we recognize that, oh, this is your meal we are celebrating. This is your table we are seated at. And we understand then Jesus as host. And so how do we understand ourselves as both guests and both hosts in our relationship to hospitality? I think that so often our social locations in life make us believe that we are the ones who have everything to give. And hospitality invites us to this place of recognizing that everyone has something to give, and there is mutuality in all of the relationships that we have. That even that person who is vulnerable in your congregation has the capacity to offer something, and you can be the guest to what they have to offer.
I go to a women's prison and to Bible study, and yes, the necessity, their best.
Yes.
While I'm also trying, but it's the most enriching part of my Bible study life.
Mm-hmm. Yes, yes, yeah. Yeah. These bullet points in the center here, hospitality often involves small acts of sacrificial love and service, which are important to both giver and receiver. At its best, Christian hospitality is the setting for crossing social boundaries and healing cultural divisions. The ways in which we give and receive across those boundaries, across those lines, which offer healing and kind of messy them up a little bit. And one day, I pray to God, they will kind of just go away. But so the question here in this middle section is, how do we embrace and systematize mutuality in our hospitality? I think the embrace part is easy. I think we can do that. I think that there is enough love and compassion in us to embrace it. The harder part here is this question of systematizing it. Think about the structure of your church or your institution. How much is it created to continue to sustain people who think the same way and who bring the same experiences, who bring the same set of gifts, and don't make space for people who are different, who bring different experiences? So how do we think about our systems? How do we think about, I don't know about you all, but in our congregation, when it is time to think about new leadership for the next year, we have these pieces of paper that go to all of the small groups, and the small groups kind of fill out and say, oh, I think Renee will be a great MYF sponsor for next year, and I think Kathy will be a great worship commission leader for next year. And it just becomes, oh, these are the people I know, and these are the people who I think could be good at this. And it becomes this way that we continue this pattern of just putting the people that we are comfortable with in the spots that offer leadership, so that we can sustain the way that things are, so that we know that things will remain comfortable. My congregation doesn't do that anymore. Yeah, because we relationships with each other, and for us, it may not be true for you all. This is a group of people who, most of them have known each other for a very long time, and so are comfortable with saying, oh yeah, I know so-and-so can do this, I know so-and-so can do that, and not stretching ourselves to think about, what about that new family that came in last year, and has anybody thought about sitting down and asking them what they feel gifted in, what some of their passions are? So we're gonna push ourselves outside of that. And what we have done, sidebar, is we have created a practice where in our fellowship hall there is this giant visual places where leadership can happen. And people are invited to go up and sign their name where they feel gifted, where they feel called. We just had a process where we did a spiritual gifts inventory, So we can think about, okay, what are the ways I know I'm gifted? We had times where they could sit down and talk with us pastors or trustees and kind of do some deeper discerning if that was necessary. But this is a place where we're not going to continue to say, well, I think so-and-so should do that. Well, what do you feel called to? And if I don't see your name up there, hey, have you taken the inventory? Let's have a conversation. So it's taking out this ability for us to keep sustaining the same patterns. How do we systematize hospitality?
How do you deal with people's false humility? I'm not going to put my name on it.
That's a really good question, Elsie. Part of what has been a part of the conversation is that everybody, down to our middle schoolers, filled out the spiritual gifts inventory in this place of recognizing that everybody brings something. And even if it's, for some reason, my congregation, I think it spreads throughout the Mennonite Church, there's a higher percentage of introvertedness, I think. And so I recognize that there are not a whole lot of people who are willing to do the kind of upfront things, and that's okay. So if that means that you're one of the people who's on the schedule to wash coffee mugs after church, then that's okay. That's a part of what you're being called into, a part of our church life. But there is a place for everyone. And we try to hold that up and try to encourage that in each other. And if you haven't found that, let's keep having this conversation. Let's keep having the conversation. Thank you.
In our culture, the culture I come from, the proverb is that self-praise stinks.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, there is. I was about to go into a sermon, but I won't. I'll simply say that so it's about breaking down this concept of self-praise, because it's not praise. It's saying that I am here because God has gifted me to do work, and so all of our existence, every human being's existence, is based on that, and so that is what we bring. And as Mennonites, we believe that we are all ministers and believers, and that so. If this is what we believe, let's live into it. And it's not about praise. It's not my gift as the person who is pastor is not any other than yours. We have different gifts. We all have one or several. Okay, I got off track there. I don't know how that happened. Okay. I want to go to this third section because it's important. Hospitality is an expression of friendship. It helps us to see dignity as well as need. The goodness and difficulties of hospitality go hand in hand. Faithful hosts must make choices in distributing resources and in expending energy. Often this means living in the tension between having limited resources and the promise of God's abundance. So I want us to capture, often when we think about hospitality, these concepts of how we are to reach out in need, it becomes this place of shoulding on ourselves, of what we should be doing, of what we should be being as a community, as Christians, as believers, and we don't make appropriate space for the risk and still maintaining the safe boundaries that we need to maintain to be safe and to protect ourselves from the dangers of what it means to be reaching out in vulnerable situations. So I want us to be able to hold that tension as well. This is not something that we can just completely jump into, no thought about it, and not recognize that there are places where we do actually have to say, no, I can't take you to the grocery store today and buy you some groceries. What are some other things that we can do to make sure your family has some food available? And living with that tension, naming that tension, is a very, very familiar thing to most people who are in need or who are vulnerable, and they will recognize that tension immediately, and that then becomes a place of resonance. It's not an unfamiliar place. We don't have to be afraid of it. It is not anything that is, I don't think it presents an oppositional stance to what we are trying to do. Yet we have to also be aware of that as we are seeking to be hospitable. It's this place of examining our boundaries. You know, where is the line where in which we are just uncomfortable enough to where it makes us sweat a little bit, but we're not putting ourselves in this completely risky place where we or someone we love can be hurt. There's a gentleman who's just started attending our congregation, maybe February or March or so. He has an incredible amount of need, incredible set of gifts, and we have really, tried to dance this dance of how do we welcome him in, and how do we protect ourselves, which is not a bad place to be. We have to maintain our boundaries, and I do so because as pastor, I don't want my folk to hurt in their giving. That harms us, that traumatizes us, and that impedes our ability to want to do it again and to create a pattern of doing it. So I'm very protective about it. But it's this conversation about how do we offer him what he and his family need in a place that puts us at a place where we can learn, where we can receive, where we can be uncomfortable, and make sure that we are not being taken advantage of. Sure. So for example, one of the elders at the church. This is a guy that lives in the neighborhood. He doesn't have his own transportation. So he usually walks to church, but then at the end of church and Sunday school and fellowship time, he asks someone if they can drop him off back at home, him and sometimes his children. And so one of my elders decided that on one Sunday she was going to, he asked her if she could drop him off, and sure, that's fine. Well, in the process of getting home, can we stop at the drugstore so I can pick up my prescriptions? And we don't have any food in our refrigerator. And God bless her whole heart, she made the stop at the drugstore, dropped them off at home, went grocery shopping, got something for them, took it back to their house, which was, I don't know that all of those things were needed. She is just so compassionate that I think it was easy to ask those things of her and know that there was going to be a yes answer. So it became this place of saying, if he has a request like that, let's make sure it comes to these three people who know how to say, who are okay with saying no. And let's work on how we can sometimes say yes and sometimes say no. But right now, there are a couple of us who know how to say no and not feel bad about it, because that's a thing. Like, it's hard. It's hard to say no because we feel like we are denying someone something that is very important to them. I don't always have that. I usually don't have that problem. And so it becomes this place of both protecting people who are not in that space and saying, okay, there's a couple of us who are in that space, and let us be the person on the front line of this. And we made a note of it. In our next elders meeting, let's talk about ways we can think about, identifying what someone else's resources are, how they can access them, and learning how to say, no, I really think that this is something you can take care of at this point in time. So, other questions? Yes. Mm. Yeah. 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 Um, that's rough. That is rough. Um, our practice is to do so. We kind of have a practice of, if someone has visited our congregation 3 times, one of our pastors meets with them and, do you want a mailbox? Here's a church directory. Let's talk about joining a small group. And regardless of where they are in life, that is a part of the conversation. That is that is a risk we are willing to take that I don't know that everyone has to be okay taking. Taking that risk, yeah, that's a big risk. That is a big risk. Phone numbers, emails, addresses, pictures, all of that. We could, we could. Hmm. Hmm. You could. Hmm. That assumes that there's access to phone. It's a question of, it then becomes a question of why is it that we share that information? And so, do we do so that we can have a way to contact each other? And some of your homeless people, what are the ways that they can access people? And so thinking about, is what we are giving them really helpful to them? Is that a population of people that don't have access to phone? And so giving them a phone list is not really a helpful thing. Or so thinking about what is going to be, what is the reason you're offering it and what's the best way to offer that to them and in true hospitality. Okay, questions? All right, flip over to the other side of the handout that I've given you. I'm gonna go fast. These are some really, really practical things I want you to be able to take back with you. At the top, you'll see here, practically communicating hospitality means reciprocating vulnerabilities, suspending our assumptions, and then embracing unity, not uniformity. And so this is kind of something that grew out of what we were doing at First in Indy. And me just saying to my congregation, y'all can't keep treating visitors like this. So these are some of the things that we talked about and that we learned from. Number one, greet, then gather. After, in our context, we have worship, then Sunday school. In between, we have a coffee time. And what naturally happens, this is a part of being human, we just are actually just drawn to the people we automatically know. And we have grown into this practice of, let me go greet someone I do not know before I go gather in the circle of women who all have the same kids, the same age, and we talk about what play dates we want to have this week. But let me first go and have a conversation with someone I don't know, as a practice of making sure that I am extending hospitality to someone who is a stranger or visitor, and I don't automatically group myself in these normal majority groups. Number two, this is so big. Introduce, don't intrude. So many of our initial questions to people, oh, where do you live? Where do you work? What do you do? How many kids do you have? Those become places of intrusion, places that build walls. For someone who is vulnerable, for someone who is a stranger, those may be questions that immediately suggest that there is a requirement for entry in your community, that I have to live a certain place, that I have to work a certain type of job. And so asking me those kinds of questions suggests that, oh, let me make sure that my answer is good enough to be invited entry into this place. Or perhaps this is a place of pain and I've been unemployed for 6 months and I really just came to church so that God can hear my cry and I can lament. And here you are asking me where I work, and that's not love, that's not welcome. And we have to be better at welcoming. We have to be better at extending grace to people so that we don't automatically put ourselves in a place of creating discomfort for the people who need comfort. So let's think about the questions that we ask when we meet people. And y'all, we play this wonderfully masterful game of the Mennonite game. And it also suggests that that is an entry requirement into our community, that you have to know somebody who knows somebody who's a son of somebody to get here and to be okay. So let's think about the questions we asked. Are you new here? How did you learn about this congregation? Or imagine this and just share something about yourself instead of beating people with questions. My name is Shannon. I've been here 4 years, and you know what? Service was really great today. We sang that song, and it just blesses my heart every time. What did you enjoy about worship today? Let's start at a place that does not put someone in a place of being a stranger. Yes. Yes. 3, offer clarity and curiosity. We have all the initials for all the names, for all the things. I remember, I think it was maybe my very first time visiting First Mennonite, even before I had become an intern. And someone said, "Are you from GC?" I don't know what that is. I mean, I do now, but, or in the service, there's all of these MCCs and MDS and all of the things that we are comfortable with that become a language of our own that we need to learn how to continue to articulate. That not only allows a welcome to people who are foreign to these concepts, but there's a world that I know too, and I can go off in initials too, and recognize that I bring an experience. And so when you come to me with conversation, can this be a place where we have created a pattern of conversation where we don't make assumptions about what you know and what I know, and that my world is open to you as is yours to mine. Seek ways to share fellowship with new people, both as families, as small groups, as a larger community. What are ways that we can practice patterns of listening, patterns of encouraging, patterns of forgiving, patterns of celebrating? When you have that person who has been a part of your community and they've been unemployed for 6 months, have a cake when they get that first job, celebrate. And that is a big thing. Let's find ways to be in real fellowship with each other. One of our favorite fellowship meals as a congregation, we do a lot of potlucks, but one of the things we do that's a lot of fun is Guess Who's Coming to Dinner, where there's several people who kind of open up their house for a meal, and then there's just random people who end up at their house sharing the meal. You just kind of sign up that you want to go, and then you get placed at a different person's house, and you end up eating a meal with people you've never eaten with before, being able to host to people who you've never shared with before, and it becomes this place of being able to listen and to hear each other's story in new ways and great ways. So how can we do that freshly and newly for each other? Storytell. Our stories we know this. They're the core of who we are. They're the foundation of who we are. How do we make space to storytell? the narrative of who we are as Mennonites, as Anabaptists, that becomes the primary story that is told. What about all of the other journeys that are woven into who we are now? Do we make space for those other stories? Do we make space to tell those stories, to listen to those stories, to celebrate those stories? How can we do that? And these last two, and I want to take us back to the image of the road to Emmaus. When we offer hospitality, when we greet, when we introduce, when we fellowship, when we storytell, this is the place where we allow space for the divine to come in, for God to be present in our interactions, for God to offer us grace and love and compassion, for us to be seen and heard and loved through one another. That's where God shows up, and it then enriches us as well as it enriches our strangers. They then become a part of our communities. We get to offer welcome, but that year I lived in the Dominican Republic, I don't like to refer to it as being a missionary, because that's totally not what I did. And I completely walked away having received more than I gave. And that happens every single time. We always walk away being able to be blessed more than we were able to be a blessing. And so when we make the space for this, when we allow God to come in and to use us in the ministry of hospitality, that is what God is able to do with our sacrifices each time. Questions, thoughts, responses? I did it in time. That was a lot, y'all.
This is very
Good.
concrete. We have folks who are very friendly, and oftentimes when a guest comes, they'll learn everything about the guest and then share that in worship. And it's not
of everyone. And this numbers the vocabulary
Good.
to take back. I might email you for another copy.
Sure,
Maybe I should
absolutely,
share it.
absolutely.
And the other part of me is thinking, oh, I can make little index cards just for
Yes,
two things.
yes,
Everybody.
yes, yep,
Well, because we do need help. We do want to
yes.
greet people, and we don't realize that the questions we're asking
Mhm.
are doing the opposite of what we want to do.
Yes,
And so, if we've got little cheat sheets that
Great.
gives us the courage to, that helps us.
absolutely.
So I'm
My email is at the bottom. I'm happy to email this to you all. I have a couple extra copies somewhere here. I can give those to you. But yeah, we made it into a bulletin insert and often plug it into our church email so that, hey, remember, this is what we do during fellowship time, because we have to retrain ourselves, and that takes time.
Shannon, we should put this on the Anabaptist Faith Formation Network. Yes. As a
Oh,
download.
okay.
And in that kind of a format, if that would be there, in the few benches you've got it already. Also the guest that's nervous about what are people going to say to me has an idea.
Uh,
And that you don't have to answer that I don't want to talk about.
correct.
You know, and if somebody blunders, they can say, I've got to tell you about
Hmm.
this,
Yeah,
you know.
yeah. Good. No, that's good.
I wonder about the person who comes who really would like to stay under the radar for a while.
Exactly. Exactly.
Lovely if no one talks.
Exactly. Exactly. I know. I know. I know. I have to, there's 2 or 3 people in my congregation who are regular offenders. And they sometimes come to me and they admit, I went up and I asked the wrong question, and they recognize, like, we have been training ourselves to think about how we are present to new people, and sometimes it means just let people be. Just let people be. We forget that we are only hosting this holy space, and that everyone gets to come into it, and some folk need to just come and bask in God. And it has nothing to do with us. And so we need to let people be able to do that without our ridiculous questions and intrusions and desire to, well, let's get you a name tag and let's get you on the roll. And no, let people be. Let people be.
That's in my, goes with introvert, extrovert type thing too. I have a friend who was coming back into the church and was going to some places. Found that she thought she liked the peace, but she couldn't stand the passing of the peace.
Yeah, yeah.
In the middle, and she said she had told the pastor, and he said, sorry, it's going to stay in, which understandably on another side, but she
Yeah.
left.
Yeah. Hmm.
Some,
Yeah.
but just that, when you're out, people, oh, you're kind of newer, but you kind of knew people, but yeah, where do you go with those things? Because on one side, it's very positive, people going, boys, nobody talked to me in that church, or not in that.
Yes.
Well, they're all over me.
Yes.
So where's that?
Right, so that's helpful because too. Then we've had the experience of I had someone call me and say, Shannon, I really enjoying worship, but I've been to First Mennonite 3 times and nobody has spoken to me. Yes, but so some people have gone too far with it and are like, okay, if I can't ask the questions I regularly ask, I don't say anything. Yes, I don't want to make the mistake. We have to give ourselves the grace of making the mistakes. We'll go up, we'll introduce, and we'll accidentally say, so where do you work? When we don't mean to say that, but that's just because that's just the way we have been trained. And so instead of making the mistake, people choose not to engage at all. And so we have to think about what it is we do to make sure we don't continue to see the same people and they just kind of run through and don't get acknowledged and don't get seen and don't get welcomed at all. So one of the other things to think about is I would guess that in most of our congregations, there's a group of fairly extroverted people who you can train to welcome well. And they become a part of just a welcoming team so that you make sure that there's no one who goes missed. And those are people who know how to say, hey, welcome to our congregation. Here's a welcome packet, a welcome bag, a welcome folder, whatever. And, it's really great that you're here. Are you new to our city? Or just the appropriate questions to have them be prepared to ask the right thing. And that takes work, but that's our job as community to encourage and kind of empower each other to do the work that we're gifted to do.
Can I take it a slightly different direction?
Yes.
One of the things that I have found really important in learning about hospitality is to be welcomed by others. So I worked for Mennonite Mission Network for quite a while, and as part of that, particularly coming back as first identity was as a North American white Menno, and to come here and have to be welcomed into white no homes where they're good at doing hospitality, but I'm the one who's used to extending it. And so to have to receive it and to know that I couldn't ever thank them, like I couldn't ever pay them back. And I can't, and that wasn't my role either. And actually, how hard it is for us to receive that.
Yes.
And I think more of us, particularly who are white, traditionally Menno,
Yes.
need to sit in that space of, this is awkward, and it made it a whole lot easier when I went to places where my language was different, and my skin color was different, and my cultural background was very different from people, to go, yeah, this is going to be hard for me to receive your hospitality, but I need to actually get over myself enough that I can figure out what my hospitality looks like then to you, and what it means for you to come and sit at my table, because actually it's really hard for me to go and sit and let somebody extend hospitality to me, and so how do I get over myself?
Yes. Amen. Amen to all of that. And then that becomes theological. Because then we have to allow ourselves to be in the space of, okay, I cannot repay God for all that God has given me. And yet what is my responsibility? What is my call to do with what I have been given? How do I find other ways to give it to other people, not necessarily the person who gave it to me, but then it becomes a way in which we understand God and we understand our call as Christians.
And
Absolutely.
Place of being like, I got nothing.
Yes.
And that's, I think particularly as we learn to cross cultures and some of those more socioeconomic divides,
Yes.
there is that point where I need to actually come to the table and say,
I got nothing.
and
Yep. And that's okay.
Yeah.
And that's okay because there is enough here at this table.
Yes.
Yeah. Yep. Any last minute comments, thoughts, questions?
How, I often think about our worship services,
Mm.
and how the ways of systematizing or speaking language that's more accessible.
Yeah.
Thoughts on that?
I do have a lot of them. I know, that's the next workshop. Because I think we have to be really, really careful. We have a responsibility to be inclusive, to be welcoming, and at the same time, we can't try to be who we are not. My congregation, we are a group of mostly white, very well educated, comfortable people who use big words to talk about big things, and that is who we are, and we have to be okay with who we are, and that means that people who don't communicate in the same ways that we communicate may likely come to our congregation and not be as comfortable with who we are. It does not mean that they should not feel welcome there. It just might mean that that is not the right place of worship for them. There are enough churches that everybody can find a place, but no one should ever walk out of our door saying, oh, that was a nasty group of people. They should walk out saying, that was a really loving group of people, and that's just not my favorite way of connecting to God. So we have to be careful about trying to make ourselves into who we think we should be, to be this place of broad welcome, and not allowing ourselves to be exactly who we were called to be. We have specific and unique gifts to do a thing, and we should be good at that. So that the people who respond that way and who communicate with God in that way can continue to do so, and we can continue to be nurtured to be Christians, and whatever we can do to keep the welcome door open, and to keep relationship with the church down the street who worships completely different than we do, to keep those relationships together, but recognizing that we have a call to be who we are. Okay. On the first side of our handout, there's a prayer at the end I'd like us to close with, if we could. Let's read it together. Jesus, make our hearts ever more and more humble, so that we might be present to those you have confided to our care. And in this way, make us instruments of your love, which gives life and joy and real freedom. Amen. Amen. Thank you all. Thank you. Mm-hmm.